Okay, so polylines and splines in AutoCAD. So let's start with the polyline. Okay, what is a polyline? A polyline is a chain of lines or arcs in a single object. Okay, right now I am just starting with the default setting, which is every click I make adds an extra line in the chain. Some things that I can change is I can draw an arc if I wanted to. Okay, and I'm going to go back to the line because there's a lot of settings in here and I'm only going to cover a few of them. Okay, then what else can I do? Okay, I can do width here. Also half width, which works very similar to width, except half width is basically width divided by 2. So I'm going to go to width here. It says specify a starting width. So I'm going to say starting width is 1, and then specify an ending width. And I'll say 0. Okay. Basically, that'll create kind of a cheesy looking arrow, but it won't be too bad. So then I'm going to use the close option here to just kind of close it, make it a single continuous object. Okay. Now if this was a series of lines and arcs, whenever I selected it, I would only select one small piece of it, one line or one arc, rather than the whole polyline object. Okay, so what are some things we can do if we have it selected? Okay, you may notice all the blue squares and rectangles, those are our grips, right? Which if we can click on a grip and just stretch and move, okay? Or we can just hover the mouse over it and see the options. Okay, on a vertex grip, we have add or remove that are additional to the stretch. If I add one, it places one a little farther along in the chain. Okay, and of course, removing, kind of self-explanatory, but nonetheless we'll cover it. Gets rid of the grip that I just created. So what about this little rectangular one? That's my midpoint. Okay, that we have add and stretch just like on the vertices. However, we also have convert to arc instead of remove. Okay, so if I convert this to an arc, well, that's exactly what it does. It converts that line into an arc. If I don't like it, I can always go back by mousing over the midpoint of the new arc and say convert to line. There you go. Okay, so then what else can we do? If those aren't enough options for you, there is the Polyline edit command, which the easiest way for me to get it is just type in pedit, if I can spell it, okay, which give us several options. Okay, I'm not going to cover all these because there are a lot, but I'm going to cover some of the most relevant ones. For example, open. Well, technically this is open and close. Okay, it toggles back and forth. Since whenever I created this object, I told it to close that last little section rather than just drawing to it, I can use the open, okay, which will remove that last segment. And then it changes to close where I can add it again. If I had other polylines or acceptable polyline-like objects in this drawing, I could use the join command. However, I don't have those right now. Okay, width allows me to change the entirety of the width, just like I did with that arrow, except the arrow was just for that particular segment that I immediately drew. Okay, edit vertex works pretty similar to using the grips. Fit. Okay, this fit and spline both work very similarly. They convert the polyline into a spline object. They just use different methods of constructing the spline. Decurve, okay, removes all splines and arcs from your polyline. Okay, and reverse will change the draw order. However, whenever you change the draw order, your starting and ending widths don't reverse. Okay, they'll stay the same. What this can be useful for is trying to specify, for example, a line type direction, which if you ever get into a fix like that, you can always use the reverse command here in Polyline Edit. So I'm going to hit the escape key here. Okay, something else we can use to do some editing. We can go to its properties, various different ways to get there. I'm going to use the right-click menu to go to Properties here at the bottom, which brings up my Properties palette. So I'm going to dock to the side, just because I like having it docked there. Okay, so what things do we have? Okay, we've got color, layer, line type. Okay, some general things. Then we've got the geometry here, which tells us the width, vertex locations, elevation, if you have it built in 3D space. Right now we're just dealing in 2D, so that's nothing to worry about. We have the area enclosed by the polyline. This only works if the polyline is closed. If it's open, well, you don't really have any area. And we have the full length of the polyline, which is basically like perimeter. Okay. Also, it tells us whether or not it is a closed polyline or not. So, now how about we go to splines? That's a fun one. Splines are interesting. You can find them under the drop-down for the draw, or you can just type in the command spline. Okay. There are various different ways to make splines. You've got two different buttons. You've got Spline Fit and Spline CV, which is control. There stands for Control Vertices. I'm just going to use the Fit method, okay, which is the default if you just type in Spline. Okay, which every point that I draw, it's going to put through the spline. Okay, there's some similarities between splines and the polylines. Okay, biggest one being able to close it. Okay, some things that the polyline doesn't have that splines do is tangency. Okay, because it's a very smooth shape. So if I change my in tangency, I can change directions like that. However, whenever I do the in tangency, it's going to finish the spline command. So there we go, which changes the way that it curves at the end. You can also, whenever you're starting the spline command, so I'm going to try to pull that back up. Okay, whenever you place your first point, you do have the option for start tangency. So I want it to start right there, then put a next point. That's not exactly what I was hoping for, but nonetheless. Okay. And then say end tangency. I can set the tangencies on both directions. Okay. So, what are some other things we can do? Just like Polyline Edit, there is Spline Edit, okay, which is actually missing an E. It's S-P-L-I-N-E-D-I-T. Okay. Press Enter. We can select our spline if you don't already have it selected. Okay. We also have Close here, just like the Polyline, and Open. We also have Join, which I'm going to see if it'll allow me to join that one. Okay. No, it was not allowed to join. Biggest reason is they didn't touch. So I'm going to move these two closer using the move command here. And join them at their ends. Okay, another way you can invoke the spline edit or even polyline edit command is double click on the spline or the polyline, and that will invoke the command. Then I'm going to say join this one and enter. now it has joined it. Okay. It seems to have defaulted, once it joined, into a control vertex display. Okay. Rather than fit points, it gives me these CVs, or control vertices. Okay. Which basically control the tangencies of the spline at the various locations of the points. And all have differing weights based on what you set them to. Okay. So, I am going to try some of these others. We can convert this into a polyline if we want to, by putting in a little bit of precision here. Okay. And now, it's a polyline. Since a spline is a smooth line, okay, it's very difficult to turn it into a series of lines and arcs. Okay. So you get a lot of little grips whenever you convert it into a polyline. Okay. Next thing, I'm going to try to go back. Okay. If you try to go from spline to polyline using the spline edit command, it'll actually convert it into a polyline. So that if you edit the now polyline, you have to use the pedit command, or polyline edit. Okay. But going from polyline to spline, it's still technically a polyline, and so you still use pedit. And you still have all the things that come with pedit, like changing your widths and things like that. Okay, we can close this or open it as we want. Okay. Now what if I had a spline and a polyline that I wanted to join together? Okay, I'm just going to draw a very simple polyline here, and then a very simple spline. And I'm going to use the CV method here. Okay, so if I wanted to join the two of them, what would I have to do? If I just use the regular join from the spline edit and hit OK, it's going to, well, it did it. Did it quite well. Okay. Where I can close it and open it, and it's a spline. Okay. Whoops. For some reason, it didn't actually join it. Let me try that again. Okay. Spline edit on the spline. Join here. Okay. Say exit. Okay. Guess I might have accidentally hit the undo or something like that. Okay. So, now something we didn't go over are the grips on a spline. Because here we have our control vertices, which are grips. If you mouse over one, you have stretch, just like clicking on it. You have add, you have refine. This is a control vertex, you can refine them, which basically splits it into multiple vertices, allowing for finer adjustment to the spline. And of course, we also have remove vertex, rather. Okay. So, but what if I didn't like the control vertex kind of thing, and what if I wanted to go back to the fit curve? That's what this little down arrow is for. Okay, I can change between fit and control vertices. Okay. One thing it does, though, if you have hard tangents on a spline with control vertices, it will not convert appropriately to a fit curve, because you may notice I lost my hard corners that I had at first. And if I just try going back, it's not going to give it back to me. I have to undo that point to get those hard points back. Okay. So just like our polyline, we can go to our properties and see various things here. We do have some different properties that are unique to splines. Okay. Like the ability to show or hide a control vertex frame. Okay. So let's say I show it. Now, whether or not I have my spline selected, my control vertices are always visible. Okay. Now, I don't think by default my object snaps will get it. It doesn't seem to be. However, that might be a node, if I can grab it. Nope, not going to give me a node. Okay. Well, at least that was a test. Okay. What happens then if I have a spline and I explode it? Could it explode? And what would it explode to? So let's try it. Okay. This spline had several hard corners, and that's where it broke whenever I exploded it into 3 independent splines. Okay. What if I grabbed it and told it to be a fit curve so that I don't have any hard points, and then try to explode it? By what happened last time, it shouldn't actually explode. Yeah. No bits and pieces. Sorry about that. What if, though, I had a polyline of similar make and exploded that? Okay. That will break up the polyline into its individual lines, arcs, or etc. Okay. Which will actually be lines rather than little polylines, like with the spline where it would break up into smaller splines. And that's pretty much all I have about polylines. Perhaps one thing, though, that I could mention, okay, is fillets and chamfers on a polyline. Probably wouldn't be too bad. Okay. If I have fillet, okay, I'm going to give it a small radius here, 1/4 inch. I'm just guessing, so we'll see. I fillet that. It adds an arc to the actual polyline. If I select the polyline, I've got an arc in there. Okay. Using the chamfer or fillet commands will not break the polyline. Okay, so if I do this, oops, I forgot to do my settings here. Okay, let's say distance is 1 and 1. Okay, I want it between this side and this side. Okay, once again, it didn't explode my polyline, I just added a chamfer to it. So this can be helpful if you're working with polylines in one large object. Any chamfers or fillets you do will not break apart your polyline. So if it's a closed polyline, you can still see if there are any, well, like area or full perimeter of the object after you've chamfered or filleted various corners. So there you go. And that is splines and polylines.